Derivatives of inverse functions. Here are 6 formulas for the derivatives of inverse trig functions. And this formula at the bottom is for the derivative of the inverse of any function that has an inverse. We're going to do 3 examples. First one is if y equals the arc sine of x plus x times the square root of 1 minus x squared, find the derivative of y with respect to x. First thing to point out is that this green is pronounced arc sine x. It could also be written like this, arc sine x. And this red and blue could also be written as x times 1 minus x squared to the 1/2. The derivative of y with respect to x. The derivative of arc sine x, we're going to use this formula. The derivative of arc sine of anything is 1 over the square root of 1 minus u squared. U squared means whatever is here gets squared, and we also multiply by the derivative of what I just underlined over here, which is sometimes in parentheses. It's the square root, it's 1 over the square root of 1 minus u squared. In this case, the thing that's squared is whatever's written here. And we also multiply by the derivative of what I just put the arrow on. After the plus sign is a product. The derivative of a product is the first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. So this red and blue is a product. This is the first. The derivative of the second is all of this. That was the power rule. 1/2 times the 1 in front. Stuff in parentheses gets copied. Exponent gets reduced by 1. 1/2 minus 1 is -1/2. And we multiply by the derivative of what's inside the blue parentheses. This is the rest. Over here after the plus sign is the rest of the product rule. The second times the derivative of the first. So to simplify all of this, this 1 over radical 1 minus x squared could be written as 1 minus x squared to the -1/2. After the plus sign right here, we're going to rearrange this, putting the negative at the beginning. X times x is x squared. 1/2 times 2 is 1. Copy the 1 minus x squared to the -1/2. And after the plus sign, we still have 1 minus x squared to the 1/2. It'll be easy to simplify this if I write this. So everywhere I saw the binomial 1 minus x squared, I'm temporarily calling that j. Right here is j to the negative 1/2. There's minus x squared j to the negative 1/2 plus j to the 1/2. When I do this, everybody can see that j to the negative 1/2 is in all three terms. And when we take that out, factor that out, we're left with a 1 minus x squared plus j. The j to the negative 1/2 in these two terms is factored out here. And when we multiply this back, this term out here, the common factor times j to the first, is j to the 1/2. Because when multiplying, we add the exponents. So we have 1 minus x squared plus j over the square root of j. J to the negative 1/2 is in the denominator now. That's 1 minus x squared plus 1 minus x squared all over the square root of j. And I meant to write the square root of 1 minus x squared. I just turned each j back into 1 minus x squared. Oh, we have 1 plus 1, 2, minus x squared, and minus x squared is minus 2x squared over the square root of 1 minus x squared. That's just combining like terms in the numerator. The 2 that's in both terms in the numerator gets factored out. The denominator is 1 minus x squared to the 1/2. Since we have 1 minus x squared to the first power over 1 minus x squared to the 1/2 power, we do this division by keeping this base, they have the same base, and subtracting the exponents. 1 minus 1/2 is 1/2. This 2 out here gets brought down, and we're done with this example. It could also, the answer could also be written like this. Two radical 1 minus x squared. Okay, the next example is if y equals the arc tangent of x over 2, find the derivative of y with respect to x. Arctan x over 2 could also be written like this. Instead of x over 2, I can write 1/2 x. So look back at the list of formulas. This time we're using this formula. The derivative of arctan u is 1 over 1 plus u squared times the derivative of u with respect to x. The formula is this: the derivative of the arc tangent of something is 1 over 1 plus u squared, meaning square whatever's written right here, times the derivative of what I just underlined. This part at the end is called the chain rule. The derivative of the arctangent of something is 1 over 1 plus whatever is here squared times the derivative of what I just circled. Multiply these numerators. 1 times 1 is 1. Multiply these denominators. 2, this denominator 2 times this denominator is 2 plus 1/2 x squared. And then if we want to multiply this denominator by 2, we could do that as long as we multiply the numerator by 2. And that would be the answer in the simplest form. We multiply the numerator and denominator of this fraction by 2 to make it look like that. So as promised, we're going to do one more example. F of x equals x to the fourth, x to the fifth, plus 2x to the third, plus x minus 1. If g is the inverse of the function f, find the derivative of g evaluated at 3. Now the formula on the list of formulas at the very bottom, the derivative of the inverse of a function, the formula goes like this. The derivative of the inverse, if g is the inverse of f, evaluated at some number is 1 over the derivative of the original function evaluated at a different number. Notice over here there's a y, and inside here there's an x. So first thing we have to do is interpret this as a y value. That means 3 goes here in place of y. We have to find the x in this function that makes y 3. We have to find the x for which y is 3. And by trial and error, or by graphing this on a calculator, you can see that this equation is true. This equation right here is true when x is 1. Because 1 to the fifth plus 2 plus 1 to the third times 2 plus 1 minus 1 is equal to 3. So that means in this formula right here, we say g prime of 3, that's the question, find g prime of 3, is 1 over f prime of 1. 1 is the x that makes y 3. So if f of x is x to the fifth plus 2x to the third plus x minus 1, the derivative f prime of x is 5x to the fourth plus 6x to the second plus 1 minus 0. The derivative when x is 1 is 5 times 1 to the fourth plus 6 times 1 squared plus 1, which is 5 plus 6 plus 1, which is 12. So back to the original question right here. G prime of 3 is the question. It's 1 over f prime of 1. The number in the question is a y value. The number over here in the formula inside here, that's an x. That's the x that makes y 3.